So, once again, very serious video.
Hey guys, welcome to, I don't even know what to call this.
I guess you would just
really,
call it the last episode.
It's not really an episode. It's
So, I feel like people who do this should know there is not a place for them on this site.
We gotta find
One of the more controversial topics this year has been cancel culture. The term itself has only been widely used for a few months, however, its impact has been sort of polarizing. Articles have begun to surface not on the trending topic itself, but the idea of a community being able to come together to literally cancel someone off the website. What people seem to misunderstand is that this isn't a new concept. Cancel culture has existed for years in the YouTube space, and it was very prevalent with creators like Lionmaker, Red Kiwis, and Keemstar in 2016. It just didn't have a name yet. Many creators have been canceled. Some you've seen, some you've forgotten, some you don't know, and some you will. While I'd admit I'm a supporter of cancel culture, I'd argue that everyone would be too if it only targeted actual rapists, pedophiles, and false accusers. What I don't support are false allegations, and while I just said I'm a supporter of cancel culture, it's hard not to look past the very steep shortcomings that have affected Slazo, James Charles, and Pro Jared of lately. But I'd argue that their experiences weren't exactly cancel culture. When people explain cancel culture, they usually leave out the part where the creator regains their career. This has shown true for innocent creators like Slazo, and those who are still considered guilty, like Red Kiwis, who gained over 2 million subscribers since he was accused of, and seemingly admitted to, sending a dick pic to a child. Today we're going to take a look at the creator who's a rare breed. The YouTuber Zaptie was canceled for many allegations differing in severity that would ultimately lead to him terminating his YouTube channel entirely and his subsequent social media accounts. Some of these allegations included being a sociopath, being a social climber, being rude to friends, and even allegations as serious as pedophilia. Some of these allegations, specifically the sociopath ones, have been debunked and disavowed by those who took part in making them. The pedophile accusations appear to be very real and have been believed by many for what is quickly approaching 3 years. For this reason, Zaptie, or Ed, has been repeatedly doxxed and chased off any social media accounts he makes by the people who are still determined to find him this long after the drama had concluded. This one marks one of the rare scenarios where a YouTuber was truly canceled. Our goal is to find out what exactly happened and whether or not these allegations still hold up today.
So, real reason it's sad for me is because he could have avoided it. He ruined an incredible future for himself. He let down not just his friends, but himself. I still feel like, I really wish I could have done something, right?
Zaptie was a YouTuber who gained relevancy in 2016. Looking at his content that you could still find on archive channels, it's clear he's taken an inspiration from creators like Colossal is Crazy. His popular videos on movies and trending topics would ultimately contribute to his fast and successful growth. He would really hit his stride between July and October when he gained over 50,000 subscribers, which for its time was a pretty massive spike in growth. This in particular was partially due to a collaboration where he uploaded a video to Pyrocynical's channel, and of course the success of his growing podcast that competed with Baited in its prime called Hot Wet Soup. Everything was looking good for Zaptie, who would eventually drop out of law school to pursue YouTube as a full-time job. This was, of course, right up until a podcast was posted on February 2nd, 2017 called The End on the Hot Wet Soup YouTube channel.
Hey guys, welcome to, I guess, I don't even know what to call this.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let's talk about the other 4 major players in this game. On the podcast itself, you'll hear from Bionic Pig and Elvis the Alien. These two are joined by a 17-year-old ImAllexx, and it's important to note as we try to decipher motivations, it's entirely possible that motivations vary from person to person. Utilizing the power of hindsight, we can clearly see that both Bionic Pig and Elvis the Alien have had nearly pristine careers years since this event. If I had to steal a joke from David Chappelle, I'd say their YouTube permanent records are perfect, or as perfect as they could be. In fact, they're precisely one Zaptie away from being perfect. And this is from someone who had a Twitter spat with the both of them in the last 6 months. Moral of the story is that neither of them have ever made a mistake remotely as bad as this one ever again. However, Alex, well, not so much.
I theorised before that this could be a tactile backstab, or it could be down to carelessness. But let's consider a third option, that Alex is naive.
So, once again, very serious video.
Since the beginning, she was being cheated on with 4 other girls who were 16 and 17 years old. My problem with Michael was him admitting to doing things that he knew Che may not have wanted to do and being incredibly forceful.
The next thing I know, somebody's fucking got a hold of my testicles.
He can literally do what he wants to this man, who is straight, who is just doing his job for them. At this point, I think it's undeniable that is what's been going on.
Grabbed me by fucking testicles and then turns to her and goes, oh, well, he's got a nice pair.
I know so many people who turn blind eyes to sexual predators, rapists, paedophiles. I know people who have known that people have done these things for months and they kept it quiet. And when I found out, I asked everybody how long everybody knew. They were like, I've known for months about the fact that everybody here is a sexual predator. And I'm just sat here going, you guys are fucking terrible. This has happened 4 times now. And it's also happened with people who just disappeared who most people wouldn't know about over the last year as well. So like there are certain YouTubers just disappeared, most people don't know why, and it's because one of my friends will be like, so-and-so did this, and I'll speak to them, and then they'll be like, yep, and then they go. So like it's been this thing now.
And then there's Deodorant Anthony, who requested that I not name him in this video at all, and as it progresses, you'll see why that's literally impossible. Sorry, Anthony. Okay, so where were we? February 2nd, 2017, the end. Now let me preface this by saying there are a lot of moving parts in this podcast in particular, so bear with me. I'm going to explain the bare essentials and add on the context that we wouldn't have known at the time. Thankfully, we have the power of hindsight here, or no doubt we'd just be as lost as the entire community was when this mess of a podcast was first released. The other 2 members decided to go forward with ending Hot Wet Soup without Zaptie in attendance to both explain and accuse him of various things. Zaptie would later defend his friends here, however, he's kinda wrong. These are definitely allegations. To get the message across, Pig and Elvis enlisted the help of allegedly Zaptie's best friend, ImAllexx.
Ed told me about 4 or 5 days ago now that he was a diagnosed sociopath. That's what Ed told me. Now, obviously, if you don't know what a sociopath is, the basics are he just can't feel human emotion. Now, obviously, this wouldn't be an issue if he hadn't have done a lot of things that, well, a lot of us kept really fucking quiet because he's our friend and we wanted to protect him and we wanted to help him, we wanted to sort a lot of stuff out.
The trio went on to explain how Ed was a diagnosed sociopath, and it became evident right off the bat that there was almost no knowledge of mental health within the group, and most of them had absolutely no idea what they were talking about.
If I had a problem, I would go to Ed, I'd be like, what do you reckon I should do? And I realised he just fed me what I wanted to hear because that's part of what he's been diagnosed with. At least that's what he's told us he's got, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we can't say 100% for sure because this is just what he's told us.
This is the thing, we can't even guarantee what he said is true because due to the condition he has, we don't know anymore. We just don't know.
We think he has.
He does know the difference between right and wrong because he has learned it from the people he's around. He has learned from us what right and wrong is.
I don't think being a sociopath degrades your ability to know what's right.
He does know what's right and wrong because I've sat in calls with him and I've told him and he knows and he has been aware and he's made moral decisions before. Like they're just his morals, not other people's.
I mean, just look at his videos. Like, obviously he knows what's right or wrong.
Well, he knows that Onision is a Tanamojo is somebody who should be attacked. And like,
I reached out to Bionic Pig, who told me that he didn't even want to make this podcast in the first place, and this is backed up by a clip from the final episode of Hot Wet Soup, where both Pig and Elvis imply they were pressured into making this in the first place.
Actually, I'm 100% against the end because
mainly I hated it. I hated it.
Mainly because it was all about his sociopathy that he doesn't have. Fuck that. You know? Like we went on this huge like this huge thing against. We made this video entirely based on what we just assumed he had, you know, based on what he told us. I mean, we had no way of really knowing.
Let's be honest. If anybody else was in our position, they probably would have done the same thing, because everything lined up, and we just, I don't know why we didn't just stop and think about it. But I mean, there were people pushing us, to be fair. But
for sure.
Yeah, like we were kind of a little bit pushed to do it.
If I had to apply some of my headcanon here and make an inference, I'd say that the entity that they're referring to was ImAllexx, because he took it upon himself to enter a podcast that was not his own and speak for approximately 56% of the runtime by himself. That's not an embellishment, I've done the math. But this situation was primed to explode, causing major coverage. It's a situation that, even nearly 3 years later, is still known and referred to today.
So I'm like, all right, well, I tell Jimmy and Aaron, and we're like, well, how many people are affected by this? And I'm like, a good 100.
Ed later claimed that he said he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, and Alex turned that into Ed was a diagnosed sociopath. He goes on to say that this was not the truth at all. He was actually diagnosed with major depressive disorder, showing some signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, and it was a narrative that Ed had made up. Alex denies this, says it's another one of Ed's lies. While it's impossible to know which is true, I'm leaning towards believing Ed here, because this man literally said he was a pathological liar, and that didn't stop Alex from taking everything he said at face value, convincing Elvis and Pig to go along with his crazy scenario, and filming an entire hour podcast about a situation that they had no evidence from a verbal conversation with Alex that included, by the way, I'm a pathological liar attached to it. That's fucking crazy. But it's impossible to know exactly what Ed told Alex, because the only other person to hear it was his ex-girlfriend Sabrina, who's apparently also not someone who was in the best mental state at the time. Or in general. That showcases one of the biggest problems of this entire drama, that most of the story is rested in the spoken testimony of blatantly unreliable narrators. Not only was the ignition point of the drama verbally told to ImAllexx, someone whose word quite simply cannot be trusted, Zaptie himself was labeled as a pathological liar and a sociopath. Regardless of whether Zaptie being a diagnosed sociopath was a lie or not, calling someone a pathological liar in a public forum when you're not 100% sure really makes telling the truth kind of difficult. Now we're caught in a situation where whatever Zaptie responds with will be looked at through a microscope, and in some cases disregarded entirely, because the man is literally being branded as a manipulative, untrustworthy mastermind to begin with. And in Hot Wet Soup's defense here, Zaptie was apparently the person who said these things behind closed doors, and it is his fault for telling them. However, it begs the question, why was this mentioned in the first place publicly if it couldn't be verified? Except it would have been a question if Alex didn't already provide the answers?
And then I'm like, okay, so I'm never gonna out you, Ed, because like he's my best friend. Then I get harassed by like everybody else, a bunch of girls and people, to basically do something about it, right? And it was like, I mean, it wasn't harassment really, but like every DM, every day, every hour, Ed this, Ed that. Ed's your best friend. When are you going to tell these people? When are you going to tell that people? Then somebody called me up and basically said, I know Ed is this. I know Ed's done this. I know you know. So I'm like put in this situation where I'm like, are you fucking forcing me to say something? And it was like, yes. So I'm like, all right, well, I tell Jimmy and Aaron, and we're like, well, how many people are affected by this? And I'm like, a good 100. Big YouTubers to small egos. So I was like, all right, I get in a call with Ed and I go, the gig's up.
The moral of the story is to introduce you to the situation and show you that many of the people involved admittedly handled the bulk of these allegations incorrectly, which is incredibly easy to do when you plan a situation like this with a man's career on the line in under a week.
Ed told me about 4 or 5 days ago now that he was a diagnosed sociopath.
Don't be fooled, these were 3 growing YouTubers, and I think a genuine reason for the podcast release was to protect their own names from being taken down with Zaptie. In a situation that would have likely leaked in the coming days or months, I genuinely believe this was a public knee-jerk reaction, and if this was the only major allegation made, Ed probably could have moved on, and there likely never would have needed to be a video on my channel about it. However, this is not the case. In the podcast, Ed was also accused of cheating on his girlfriend with a number that had fluctuated between 3 3 and 4 girls, but in this case, they say 4 here. It's important to note that only one singular girl has come forward to the public in nearly 3 years since this happened, and we in the public don't even know for sure if those other girls exist. But wait, I know what you're thinking. Why the fuck does anybody care about a guy who was 19 or eventually 20 at the time cheating on a girl? We've all been to high school, some of us have been to college, and quite frankly, this isn't on the the internet needs to get involved here kind of issue. And I would normally agree, however, Alex says this.
Since the beginning, pretty much, from the timelines we've crossed over with all the girls, some we can't name, she was being cheated on with 4 other girls who were 16 and 17 years old.
Okay, so now we have an allegation. Other than this, the vast majority of allegations towards Zaptie have been debunked, or they were snowballs like, he's nice to big YouTubers and mean to small YouTubers. Well, accusing someone of being in a relationship with a minor is way worse than anything else Zaptie has been accused of. So it's all the more interesting why Alex and friends gloss over it here. When the first podcast didn't have its intended result, on February 5th, the pedophile accusations had begun to rain down on Zaptie from an accuser named Heather, another YouTuber named Deodorant, his girlfriend, and ironically enough, you're not going to believe this one, ImAllexx.
It's like, I just don't get it. Why would you ever call your friend a paedophile? See, some spastic who hears this would be like, well, you called Zaptie a paedophile, but I didn't. I just said, like,
oh yeah,
fucks to the wrong people.
Heather created a twit longer where she stated that she was manipulated, lewd images were exchanged, Zaptie encouraged her, and most importantly, she was 16 years of age. On top of that, she attached a few screenshots that made their way around quickly. This included the infamous "you're worth getting arrested for" response that's so memeable, it's probably the biggest reason that these allegations have still remained largely unquestioned to this day. The first thing that caught my eye specifically was that the main twit longer right here says no nudes were sent, and the message implies right here that the girl was wearing some form of clothes. On top of that, these are very blatantly cropped, with no scrolling DM proof or extra context for each screenshot. We genuinely don't have any idea whether things like "you're worth getting arrested for" were a joke or not, because we only see what Heather wanted us to see. Before you say, oh, who joke about something like that, let me help remind you that I just vindicated a YouTuber who told the girl it's rape time in the DMs, and that girl was literally accusing him of rape. Context matters, and people make edgy jokes. Also, she claims she was manipulated here, but the only thing these screenshots show is her blatantly flirting with Zaptie. Claiming manipulation just seems like it was the right thing to say when you're dealing with somebody who's accused of being a sociopath already. On top of that, from a legal standpoint, wherever he was at the time had a legal consent age of 16, as confirmed by the entire cast of Hot Wet Soup, unless they were lying. Whether it was Canada or a state that he resided in, he could have legally had sex with this girl. For this reason, I was confused as to why this was even an issue at first. I rationalized it as such. Well, I guess 2 people who legally could have sex with each other were in an e-relationship, whatever that means, for a few months, and then they had a falling out. The girl decided to call him out mid-drama for a bit of clout, and you know what? That's not a crazy leap of judgment to land on. And for all you Brits out there standing on your high horses with your arms crossed furiously, getting ready to spam my comment section, it's legal over there for you guys to do this shit too, so get the stick out of your ass. But this is where the story really goes off the rails, so hold on tight. A few months later, it had become public information that Heather had been lying to the entire community about her age. She was allegedly 13 years old. So now on top of all of that, Zaptie was catfished. So this leads to crazy theories that Zaptie's into prepubescent children, or Zaptie broke the law, or Zaptie knew the whole time, and the internet spiraled into a shit show. So just to summarize, we have a girl who claimed she was 16, who was 13, who claimed she was manipulated, but didn't show any evidence, and now people are beginning to tweet that he sent and received nudes from this girl. And on top of that, these Snapchat leaks show Heather giving a statement in tweets by Deodorant's girlfriend. I think it's funny right off the bat that she's friends with Hyojin, so we know just what community this is coming from. But right here we see her admit to catfishing and lying about her age directly in these screenshots. But do you want to know what the real punchline is? Do you know the kicker? These Snapchats have nothing to do with Zaptie. I'm dead serious. This was in December of 2016, around the time that Heather was involved with Zaptie, but the same 3 people are involved simultaneously with an entirely different catfishing situation on an entirely different YouTuber. Are the red flags flying yet? And if you're curious, these allegations went from Well, Nick Cash is sexting children. 2. Don't exchange nude with fans. The second Hey Watch Your Mouth asked him to show portions of the screenshot where Nick verified her age. I don't know the whole situation. I'm not well versed on the situation, but I do know one thing. It never went anywhere. Shocker coming from these people. Yeah, it's sketchy, but now let's get back to the plot. Now I'm second guessing literally fucking everything that I see, and I see this message I originally ignored entirely, and notice it says, weird question, did you save those pics? I'd have no issue if you did. Right there, blatantly on. Who the fuck asks a question like that? Listen, I'm not in many e-relationships because I'm a fan of turning Discord off once in a while, so somebody who might be into this, please fill me in and let me know, is this fucking normal? Oh, man, you know those pics that people think are illegal? Can you just clarify that you've saved them on your hard drive? I mean, that's such a perfect screenshot. It almost looks like she was fishing for it, for God's sake. And now I'm clearly speculating, so I threw up a Hail Mary pass and attempted to get in touch with Heather, and miraculously, by an act of God, she agreed to answer my questions.
I was actually talking to Ed about this the other day, about how like that entire situation absolutely ruined me. And like he was saying how like it was not my fault and I shouldn't blame myself for it, which was nice of him.
So I reached out to Heather with a few questions, and while she wasn't exactly happy to answer them initially, it seemed like she was happy she did by the end of it because her story really hadn't been told since the initial Twitlonger was released. So the first question I asked her right off the bat was how old was she when this took place, because her age had been up for debate, and her response was, I was 14 turning 15, and I told him I was 16 or 17. I don't remember. He wasn't aware. Nobody was. I came forward about my real age eventually, and I knew it was wrong, which is why I decided it needed to be said. And this adds loads of context right off the bat. It's entirely possible that she told him she was 17 because in December she had stated that she was 17 years of age during the Nick Cash situation. So regardless of what she said in the original Twitlonger, it's possible Zaptie thought she was 16 or 17 since there's so many inconsistencies with the Twitlonger itself. Next I asked straight up if Zaptie ever sent her nudes because this has been a topic of discussion, and she responded with, no. He's never sent lewds or nudes or anything of the sort to me. I know he has to other girls because I've been shown them unfortunately, but never to me. I genuinely don't remember if this had been said before, but he said he was planning a trip to Washington to come see me and have sex. And once again, one Google search away, it shows that Washington had a consent age of 16. So without Zaptie knowing her proper age, it's entirely possible that he had considered this at the time. And to expand upon that anymore would really be condemning Zaptie for a thought crime. Just to clarify what Heather said was true, I asked the same question to Bionic Pig, and this is what he had to say. I never saw anything about actual nudes, just sexting. I remember him messaging me about how sick he felt when he found out how young she actually was.
He wasn't going out of his way as like a predator, I don't feel like. Did he know that she was 13? Or did he think that did he know he thought that she was 16?
He told us, he told us that he thought, because I remember messaging both of us saying that he just found out that she was 13, and he said he was throwing up all night because he found out.
He thought that she was 16, right? So he thought that she was 16.
16 is still bad.
I know that's bad, but you have to put it into perspective, right? Like from my perspective, it's disgusting, but still, he's what, like 20, 21? How old is he? 21?
I think 20. 20, yeah.
He's 20?
He's 20.
So 16 and 20, that's not like a huge gap, right?
And that corroborates her story. This all checks out. So now it's gone from Zaptie sexting minors to Zaptie's been talking dirty to a girl who is catfishing as someone he could legally have had sex with, but no naked images were even exchanged. So I clarified with Heather, and she said this. Yes, it was legal in the circumstance that no explicitly nude images were sent. Provocative images were sent, but nothing 100% nude. So as far as I know, this doesn't even break the fucking law? So after I got that cleared up, I asked another question that would have served as an excellent opportunity for her to play victim if she wanted to do that, to see where her actual motivations lie. And to my surprise, she didn't do that. I asked Heather how she felt about exposing a YouTuber and how she felt about the backlash she had received, and this is what she had to say. I knew Ed ever since he had 600 subscribers on YouTube, so I was one of the people who knew him when he was just starting out his YouTube channel. And honestly, it's been one hell of a roller coaster ride. We would get into Skype calls with my friend Katie. Katie triggers me from Leafy is Here, so it really didn't feel much different when he began to gain as much traction as he did. When we started talking in that sort of way, I knew it was wrong. I knew it would get out in the end. It wasn't my goal to expose him, because I genuinely did like him, and despite our history, he's still a good guy. He's not a sociopath. He's not a pedophile. He's not a fucked up person. He didn't know I was that young at the time, and that's completely my fault. I knew right from the beginning when I posted that tweet longer that nothing would be the same regards to my status, reputation, etc. But once all the allegations appeared on Hot Wet Soup, I felt like it needed to be said because some of my closest friends at the time had already known me and him were talking, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it got out there. No, I don't wish I did anything differently, and if anything, it was a step forward to doing the right thing. I don't believe in cancel culture, and a small part of me regrets exposing him in the first place because I knew he would make it far and he would become extremely successful. And then she went on to say, I felt like it needed to be said. Revisiting the situation 2.5 years later, now that I've matured and grown up, I definitely have more headspace to review and think my decisions through. And that pretty much just walks back all the allegations tenfold. Before you start losing your collective minds on Heather, I'm gonna be honest here, she really didn't have to clear that up. I honestly didn't expect her to clear this up, so I really appreciate her doing that. The girl was 14 years old when this happens, and I think she made a lot of mistakes, but I'd be disingenuous if I didn't say that I think people had been taking advantage of her and her situation to get back at Zaptie in some way, shape, or form. Do I think she's immune to criticism? Oh, fuck no. But I really appreciate her stepping out of the shadows to clear up an issue that's so commonly misrepresented.
Nothing like that is ever going to happen again. Like, I refuse to allow it. Yeah. I'm never going to talk about anything like that ever again. Like, it could turn out that somebody rape somebody, you're never gonna get a fucking word out of me.
At this point, the sociopath thing had been debunked, the narrative had begun to crack, and Heather's allegations had been the only real damning allegation against him to warrant such a response. Both Deodorant and ImAllexx took to Twitter to defend themselves and attack Ed. Their biggest pushback at the time came from Tommy C and Danarchy, who was formerly VWQ.
Because I know, first of all, there's no blood test for this. It's a subjective opinion of a trained professional, and that's it. They don't call it sociopathy. They call it antisocial personality disorder. And it doesn't particularly work like this. There is tests out there. There are, from what I understand, they are doing studies on brainwaves and stuff like that, but there is nothing concrete. And for him to say I have been diagnosed with this, it just doesn't make any sense.
Danarchy had made 3 good videos on the situation, the first of which got him on Tommy's February 15th show. It basically predicted a motive for Zaptie that ended up being one of the most true representations of what Zaptie was doing at the time, and I'll leave a link to that in the description down below if you'd like to check it out. Danarchy appeared on Tommy's stream to go over the last one of his videos, and this podcast is significant for 2 reasons. The first reason is it's really eye-opening how much Deodorant was involved. Just to give you the backstory, Deodorant had been a Patreon of Ed. He had been in the same friend circle as Ed. He was planning to go to VidCon and stay in the same house as Ed. His entire YouTube channel got started by Anthony being inspired by Ed. And now Anthony would never become a major player on the platform, but his hands were all over this specific drama, more so than I think that anyone initially realized. First of all, he spent an entire hour trying to convince Danarchy that Ed was a bad person.
When I spoke to someone directly affected by Zaptie's actions, they told me all the things that he had done and shared with me some of the conversations they'd had. It's not my place to say, it's nobody's place to say, these are private issues. But at the end of the conversation I had with this person, even though they'd spent the last hour trying to convince me that Zaptie is a sociopath, I left even more convinced that these were all signs of depression.
Okay, that's a little weird, but then he tried to convince Tommy of the same thing.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Anthony didn't convince me of shit. In fact, he convinced me of exactly the opposite.
Okay, well that's just 2 people. I mean, that's nothing crazy sketchy yet. But while this was live, he attempted to call in.
And I'm not really interested in Anthony coming in. I know I like Anthony, but I think this is Alex's game.
And when Alex does call in, Alex says this.
Because you've spoken to Anthony, I know you have. Anthony had to convince me that Ed was bad.
And now it's getting a little sketchy, but if you think that's sketchy, hold on tight because you ain't seen nothing yet. Then if you go back to the Hot Wet Soup podcast, you could hear them name drop him.
Some DMs Deodorant had with him because...
And then it all starts to click. Well, if you look at Heather's initial tweet longer, she cites Anthony as one of the reasons she's coming forward. No, I'm not kidding. She literally links to one of the tweets that predates her tweet longer, and if that's not crazy enough, he actually tweeted her allegations 2 hours before she made her initial statement and poisoned the well before the victim even had a chance to tell her story. Where Heather in her tweet longer said no nudes were actually sent, Anthony tells a very different tale. So Anthony was a Zaptie superfan who was donating not 5, not 10, not 20, not 50, but $100 a month to Ed, and at one point he even forked over $400 to get Ed a gym membership, only to find out that Sabrina had already given Ed money towards that, and he pocketed some of Anthony's money. And suddenly, now he's Zaptie's biggest critic, the one that's making these outrageous claims and not backing them up. Well, I got in touch with him too, and this is what he had to say. Yeah, those things were said to me. I can't remember what the word for word was as it was in a call, but I was pledged to him back when I was still at home and had a disposable income. To be fair to him, I had been pledging $100 a month since he had inspired me to start my own channel, but when I left my job, I couldn't do that anymore, and instantly, I got hostility from him in a call. I felt bad about it and thought I was screwing him over, but I just couldn't afford it. I almost kept pledging thinking that I could keep it up for a month or two before I'd have an issue. Ultimately, I didn't, and he still talked to me since we had the same friend circles, but it was definitely colder. I felt pretty used by that point, and since I was pretty naive, I hadn't learned much about dealing with online personalities. And I'm not gonna say anything rash or definitively accuse him of anything, but that's motive, and I think that's undeniable. When you take a look at the blatant fucking lies this man posted on Twitter that are still up 3 years later, it's so hard not to take this as malicious. Pictures aren't illegal, it's child porn under 18, it doesn't matter in the eyes of the law. What pictures? I never spread the nudes being sent to Heather publicly. That was in this convo only. Everything I tweeted is verifiable. Verifiable by who, motherfucker? I talked to the sources. She claimed there was never any nudes sent. So what nudes are you talking about? Who the fuck are you lying to? Heather's statement was literally out 1 hour prior, and even then she could have verified this wasn't true. So you had direct access to her. If I'm able to track this girl down 3 years later, then you could have just sent her a message before you wrote this tweet. Why are you lying? Oh, and we can't forget this one. Skepticism is healthy, but I don't see why it's necessary here. Hey, whoa, hey, hold up. Hey, don't question anything I'm saying, guys. Hold on. So we can't call you out on your blatant slander and degenerate bullshit, Anthony? Where the fuck are the other 3 girls, Anthony? You keep claiming there are 4 total girls, and I'm only seeing 1. And there are shitloads of these tweets. I'm just gonna let them roll while I continue my video. Thank you very much. It's a little telling that guys like Elvis the Alien and Bionic Pig had started to move on, while this situation kept getting escalated by Alex. Oh, hold on. Wait, I'm sorry. This one's fucking ridiculous. So you're admitting that you withheld this screenshot from the Hot Wet Soup podcast, and you were fully aware of this happening, but only when people didn't just accept that the most talented guy in your circle was a sociopath. That's when you decided he no longer deserves your defense anymore? What kind of logic is that, Anthony? He's only a pedophile when he doesn't go quietly? How about you call the cops if you got so much evidence, Anthony? But you didn't, did you? Yeah, that's what I fucking thought. And speaking of people who don't call the cops, I think now's a good time to discuss ImAllexx's involvement with this situation. A brief summary of this portion of the story would be a perfect 10 words by Tommy C.
Alex, what did you know, and when did you know it? Hot Wet Soup, what did you know, and when did you know it? Did you really believe that the community was going to turn around and say that I was supporting a pedophile when I'm actually playing the role of the journalist on a topic that you put out in the public discourse?
And what did Alex know, and when did he know it? Well, he knew about the girls months before this even came out from this story.
You know, I was there for him. It's one of the reasons why I became best friends, because I knew about stuff that was going on in his life when he didn't know that I knew, and I hinted at it, and that's how we became good friends. I wanted to help him, and it's kind of sad, but I feel like this is one of the best ways to help him in a really fucking weird way.
Me and Ed became friends because I saw a tweet about the fact that he cheated on Sabrina. Yeah. And I DM'd him asking him if it was real. So that's pretty ironic. That's how the friendship started, because I was trying to help him not fuck more things up, because I like Ed a lot. I started talking to him knowing that he was a bit dodgy, but not knowing that he was mentally, Ed just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And that became apparent because he was very, very open with me. And he was basically telling me about how, like, he was so close to fucking, like, he had bad mental health issues. Which we could, like, and the reason that we took solace in each other is because we could both heavily relate to each other, and YouTube practically saved our lives.
Oh, that's kind of weird, Alex. And that didn't lead him to expose Ed. It actually led to Alex planning on moving in with him.
So, like, I don't think people realize that me and Ed were on a friendship level, like, more than any other, like, average YouTuber. Like, his dad knew who I was. I spoke to his dad. We were gonna fucking meet up at Ed's place. Like, we were gonna live with each other. Like, it wasn't fucking memeing like the rent was arranged and shit.
So at the time, it was all okay in Alex's mind. He planned to move in with someone he already deemed as sketchy right out the gate. But where did it go wrong? What's Alex's motivation? Well, you've already heard the clip where he said he was basically blackmailed into backstabbing his friend. However, in the podcast, he says this.
I then realised that was wrong and that we couldn't do that. I called him up the next day. He's about to watch a film and I said, Ed, we've got to talk about this. How is this going to affect Aaron and Jimmy? How is it going to affect the Hot Wet Soup lads? I said to him. And he was like, I just didn't think it would be a problem, me being a sociopath, was his response. And then I said to him, you got to understand that, like, we're not going to want to do the podcast with you after this. You have to be aware. And he's like, well, do they know? And I was like, I'm sure they know at this point. I didn't really want to say that I told them because he was still my best friend.
It's crucial that other creators know about this, just so he doesn't take advantage of them.
The thing is, for being a sociopath, is one of the key staples, is that he only can feel for himself. He told me this. He can only feel what comes from him. He can't feel what me or Aaron or Jimmy feel if we came to him and went, we got a problem, mate.
Was it because Zaptie did terrible things? Or was it because someone forced your hand? On top of that, why were you okay with being the man's best friend and moving in together, only to go and do this just 4 days after Zaptie confided in you and says that he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder? Why not just ask him to get a second opinion? Was firing up an episode of his own podcast really the way to go public?
And when I was really, really disappointed with him, they had mentioned that he was talking to underage girls, but the podcast has this realm of, we're not trying to hurt, we're trying to help him. So when the so-called hard evidence comes out that he did have inappropriate contact, not illegal, it doesn't turn out, inappropriate contact with a girl under the age of 18, it was like, now we must separate.
DMZ, I'm outing Ed, I'm posting on Twitter. Now, I tried to stop her because of the fact that it would not just damage my best friend, even though I knew he was wrong, and I knew that he was killing this girl. It would also damage the Aaron and Jimmy, who are also friends of mine. I was like, I can't let this happen. Like, we need to sort this out in private, which is what we've tried to do for 3 months.
It was so public as well, and like people were saying that it's my fault it was in the public eye, but like, alright, they're spastics you can't read, because anybody with eyes would have seen people tweeting about it for like 2-3 days previous.
Yeah.
That's why we were pushed. We were all pushed to talk about it publicly. So we went to Hot Wet Soup and we were like, alright, let's fucking end it. But
Ed told me and he was a sociopath. His mistake was telling because she isn't in a stable condition. That was his downfall. And this is one of the things, like, as a sociopath, I honestly do not have a fucking clue why he did that, because I told him I would have kept it a secret. I told him,
Did you guys not have
guys?
And now it makes perfect sense. Ladies and gentlemen, we have cracked the code. So this was only an issue when people found out about it, and you realized that you could easily be tied to it. So you felt the need to get out ahead of tweets the vast majority of the community hadn't seen on some girl's Twitter profile, and put it on a platform where everyone would see it. So you had no issue with the girls, the alleged sociopathy, or any of the other things that you knew were going on until it was your ass on the line, and you got Ed into a call and said,
the gig's up.
That's pretty fucked up, Alex. That's accuse my friend who lived with me for a few weeks of rape kind of fucked up. You do remember this guy dropped out of college to do YouTube full time, right? That hasn't been lost on you. But that's not even the end of it. This man's lies show no bounds. On Tommy's show, he states that he had no idea how old the girls were, and he had no idea that they allegedly exchanged nudes, when on the Hot Wet Soup, he was actually the one to make the initial allegation.
Yeah, but that's when you cut ties. Exactly. But I mean, what did you think that they were doing prior to that? You were aware of it when the podcast came out. What did you think? You think they were exchanging jib jabs like me and Aeon do? And Valentine's gifts and chocolates?
No, I didn't know they were talking until after the podcast. That was my problem.
Wait a minute. Doesn't he mention... Look, V, doesn't he mention in the podcast that he knows about these underage girls? I'm sorry, Alex.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Alex, I'm sure you said in the podcast that you knew that he was speaking to underage girls.
I'm pretty sure we didn't know that or mention it on the cast. What I knew is that he was cheating on 4 girls.
She was being cheated on with 4 other girls who were 16 and 17 years old.
That's what I said. It was 4 girls at the time.
You said cheating, but you didn't know that they were underage on the podcast, and you didn't say that. You're saying that right now on my show.
It's important. There's more than 4. So we knew about the 4 girls who were of age, but like he had his in real life girlfriend, Sabrina, and 2 other artists in our community.
No, the only thing that's important is what you said in the podcast now, Alex.
He attempted to discount all his critics through a swarm of deleted messages, and in his podcast, he deflected criticism by saying they just lacked research and that they were uncredible spastic Discord members.
That was the funniest thing about that situation. The only people who took issue with it were Discord people, and they were just, but like all their research was like absolutely fucked. I mean, like that situation wasn't good. It wasn't handled well at all. But like, I still did not believe I was in the wrong in that situation at all. I never will do. Yeah, fucking moral high ground Discord wankers. Okay.
And all those fucking commentary channels that made videos on it. Like, who was it? Was it VWQ who made a video on you?
Like 3 fucking videos in a row. Like, he's a top man. Fucking Dan.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
He's a top man. But it was just like, the only people who had issues with it were like, the people who are either really, really desperate for attention at the time or spastic Discord members. There was nobody who was respectable or actual friends with me or Ed in that situation. I still stand by this today, no matter if it offends people. I don't give a fuck anymore. Who didn't understand where we're coming from, because everybody who knew Ed knew he was pretty fucked.
Yeah.
Everybody had no fucking clue who the guy was, and just like, oh, good YouTuber did Purge Part 2.
When he's seen here, in this fossil of a tweet, not only co-signing the allegations from Anthony, but accusing Tommy C of being a pedophile for simply defending Zaptie when the information wasn't readily available when Tommy made his initial tweets. And there are even more blatant contradictions that I'm not going to get to here, so I've uploaded an entire 30-minute stream from May 16th, 2017, and it'll be going live shortly after this video is released. I'll also be live on Shot from the Point directly after to analyze this. The links for both will be down in the description box below.
Do we know that for a fact? Because I don't know if that's ever come out. I mean, we had an accusation. Do we know that for 100% fact that he's received?
It's like, he's committed a crime, right?
All right. Do we know that for a fact?
Yes, because it counts as soliciting even if you just
Okay, no.
like,
Do we know? Do we have physical evidence that the police been turned over? Hey, V, have you ever found any absolute definite proof in your covering this topic that pictures are being exchanged? Because I think Ed denies that in the tweet longer, if I'm not mistaken.
All I've got is
that.
Hang on, Alex. I'll get right back with you. I'll give you a chance to respond.
All I've got is that that one particular girl has sent photos to him, not that he's sent anything back, and I don't know. I have it on.
Have we verified? Are these pornographic in nature? These photographs?
These are they're underwear.
Alex, I'm asking
photos,
V. I'm asking V. I will give you a chance to defend yourself. I promise.
They're underwear photos and no full nude.
No full nudity. So it probably doesn't fall under American, at least in Ohio. Nudity laws.
It's also worth pointing out that the same person has pictures of herself in her underwear on her Twitter.
Oh.
So part 1 really covered the allegations utilizing the information that was in the public forum for the events that transpired in 2017. Part 2 will release tomorrow and cover everything that happened with Zaptie's return, the aftermath of Zaptie's return, and the impact on the community with my opinions of Ed tacked on at the end. It'll be a nice summary for the entire story, and then we can move on with the situation. Now, if Ed would like to reach out to me at any point, I would be happy to take an interview from the man to see what his life has been like in the past 2 years and to see what he thinks of my interpretation of events. So if you're listening, Ed, I'm happy to hear your side of the story.
No, tell it to me. I'm gonna send him. I'm sending Alex my Skype right now, so he can add me and I can add him. And no, we can't review. I don't want Alex getting bombed with.
Yeah, I know. That's
bullshit.
why I was thinking.
Shit, I just exposed.
That's the first clue. Now what do we do? That's the first clue. We gotta find